Hello everybody and welcome to Forever Sports. And some big news coming out last night. Damian Willemse has officially received a 3-match ban for his tackle against Cardiff in that 58th minute where he was red carded. And the ban will see him miss the playoff games, at least the quarterfinals and the semifinals. But the good news for Stormers fans as well as Springbok fans is that should they progress all the way to the final, he will be available should he attend tackle school, which obviously they all do. And should the Stormers progress to the semifinals, it would mean that Damian Willemse would have served his ban when the Springbok season starts with that game against the Barbarians at the end of June. So whilst he will be missing this weekend for the playoffs and for the semifinals, guaranteed, hopefully he will be back for the box, and if the Stormers do progress to the final, they will be able to call upon him in the biggest game of the season. And I'll tell you what, I don't think it's that far-fetched to think they might get to the final, in which case he will be available to play in it. And how would that be for a nice little turnaround to come back for the final and help them maybe win a second URC title? Before we get into exactly what happened in the hearing and the likes of that, please do smash like on the video. Please do subscribe to the channel as well. Right, so as you can see over here, 58th minute, he receives a red card at the DHL Stadium down in Cape Town when the Stormers were leading Cardiff at the time. And, John Dobson talking about it being an absolute disaster because of, first of all, how well he's playing. He's starting to look like the Damian Willemse so old, and he's a big game player. You know, he's a player when you get to semi-finals, finals, he stands up, and he's had lots of clutch moments in his career already. And the main thing is you want to be able to have your best players, and I think that Damian Willemse on his day is probably the best player in the Stormers squad. So to not have your biggest gun going into quarterfinals at a time where, in a season where you've maybe been a bit iffy, is huge. And I do think that the Stormers are riding a bit of a wave with regards to the form they've had. I think they could very well get themselves to semi-final and maybe a final. If Sasha Famicom-Zulu, for example, keeps playing the way he is, they could definitely get them that far. But they will need a couple of other stars to align with regards to who they play along the way. In terms of a couple of lucky breaks. For example, we've seen like Leinster's going out in quarterfinals, semi-finals, all of a sudden Bulls having a home final, Stormers having a home final. So they might need a bit of favours from the other teams. They might need some stars to align, but I definitely think they can get to the final. In terms of Damian Willemse, that was the big freeze frame, really, which shows why that red card was awarded. And the main thing is, was it intentional? No, and we'll talk a little bit about the entire process and where he sort of ticked the box and didn't tick the boxes. But it was a case of being a bit reckless, I think. I think going into a tackle where he was too upright, I think that he put himself in a situation where the referee makes a decision. This is why I talk about quite a lot. You don't give the referee a decision to make at the end of the day, even if it's not your intent, even if it wasn't your intention to go in high and you weren't trying to make a high tackle. By going into tackles upright, you put yourselves in a position where you can be in any situation like this and where there can be contact, shoulder or leading arm to the head with a high degree of force, which is a red card. In terms of the process, and it is quite a complicated process, that is basically the graphic. Shout out to Jared at Rugby Mad for putting that together. But basically, they decided that the entry point was at mid-range, which is 6 weeks. And there are 3 factors that go into sort of deciding whether it's a low-end, mid-range, or top-end, sort of suspension. Now, the main thing is it wasn't intentional. So you can see a big cross against intentional over there. That's the first one over there. Then you've got reckless, which is ticked. And you've got player injured, not ticked. Now, I don't understand why player injured comes into it. I don't think it should. I think it's a really arbitrary point of view. I think that there are great tackles, legal tackles which injure players, and there are illegal tackles that don't injure players. And I don't think the injury of the player should come into this at all. It's about the action, what the player in question did, rather than banning them basically on what happened from it. Because we've seen people, croc rolls and whatever that don't get punished, and players have been out for 9 months. We've seen people being hit very legally and breaking limbs and stuff like that. So yeah, I don't think that should come into it. But the main thing is that the big tick box there was reckless. He went in upright and he put himself in a position where there could have been this contact, and there was this contact. And Law 9.11 says that players must not do anything that is reckless or dangerous to others, including leading with the elbow or forearm or jumping into or over a tackle. So basically leading with the arm, elbow, or forearm basically is what he's been basically accused of, and kind of going with his arm there. And then that's kind of maybe making the hit there, and it's direct to the head. They have, however, added mitigation. So given the fact that he's got a good record, that he's accepted committing an act of foul play, that there was remorse and apology, and he showed good conduct throughout the banning or the investigation, the hearing process. That's what we get in the end. They have reduced it to 3 weeks. So mid-range starts 6 weeks. They've reduced it down to 3 weeks. There are no aggravational factors to consider. So there's not a repeat offender. There wasn't a need for a deterrent, and there was no other factors that aggravated. So, for example, if it was, if he didn't behave well during the process, for example, and if he's something they've done quite a few times, like an Owen Farrell, for example, then you can get aggravating sort of factors basically based on their record and the situation, which you can then add. So you can go 6 weeks down to 4 weeks, back up to 7 weeks, final sanction, whatever. So the final sanction is 3 weeks brackets games. That's quite important, obviously, because it is an EPCR weekend. So if it was 3 weeks, just weeks, then this would count as a week where the Stormers are not even playing. So it's 3 games that he could be involved in, which we've seen New Zealanders suddenly declare them available for a club game this weekend. All of a sudden, Damian Willemse gets to get that sanction down to 2 weeks, and he got tackle school 1 week, and basically he's available for the semi-finals. So the final sanction is the 30th of May. Glasgow Warriors URC quarterfinal is already gone, so he can't play in that game, which is going to be a tough game for them. And then they said the remaining 2 fixtures to which sanction will apply shall be determined based on the progress of the DHL Stormers. If they progress, then bang, the semi-final becomes. And then in theory, the third match would be the final. However, he can complete tackle school, from my understanding, and reduce that ban down to 2 games, which means he will be back for the final. Selfishly, from our point of view, I just want to see the Stormers win this weekend, because it then means that he'll be available for the Barbarians game at least. Even if he misses the semi-final, he'll be available for the Barbarians game. I just want to see him back in the green and gold. I think that by the end of 2023, he was probably our most important player at a stage, and I think could be one of the best players in the world. I think he could be a World Player of the Year award nominee and winner, even, actually, if he continues the sort of progress that he's had. So I do think it's fair. I think that it's, we need to be very cognizant of what the laws are, and also what they're trying to achieve. I think this is the main thing. No one's calling him a dirty player. No, and again, the whole process does say that, it was reckless, it wasn't intentional. But we're basically just trying to get people out of being in those situations. We're trying to basically make the game safer by saying, you can't go into tackles when you're upright, because there is this risk. You've got to go lower. And the big sort of advocate as well in terms of going lower is that in theory, it makes offloading easier. And it's supposedly going to potentially add more excitement in terms of more offloads, more ball in play, more fewer rucks, and a higher sort of speed of play, and hopefully more tries. There's also a certain amount of rhetoric about that as well. But the main thing is safety. It's all about safety. You've got to try and get these tackles lower, so we're not having direct head contact, and we're reducing the chances of concussion. So I think it's unlucky for him. I do think that it was a red card. I do think that at the end of the day, there was the contact that there was, regardless of whether it was intentional. Could he have avoided it? Yes, he could. Therefore, this is the punishment, and he won't do it again. And that's the main thing. What do you think? Let me know down in the comments below. Smash like on the video, subscribe to the channel as well. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Steve, and I'll chat to you soon.